Alright, today we're going to make a full-on dinner of pork chops, baked potatoes, roasted veggies, and braised cabbage. A complete meat in three type deal here. To start, we preheat the oven to 450. Next, we want to dry our pork chops, so using paper towels, we will dab both surfaces to take away any moisture. Once dried, we can begin seasoning, starting with salt, making sure to sprinkle from on high to get that even coating. Afterwards, you can do whatever spices you'd like. In this example, I'm using cumin and black pepper. I think it's a good practice to sprinkle the spices with one hand and spread it around with the other hand. This way, only one hand is ever touching raw meat. After sprinkling on the salt and spices, we let it sit there for no less than 40 minutes. This way the salt can penetrate deep into the meat and the spices can form a nice skin around it. While that's happening, we can get to work on the potatoes. So to start, I like to form a wet brine of half a cup of water and 1 to 2 tablespoons of salt, depending on how salty you like your potatoes. We do this to ensure an even seasoning on the potatoes as opposed to just sprinkling salt on top. After that, grab your potatoes, make sure they're washed, and poke them full of holes. This will allow excess steam to escape and also allow that brine to get deeper into the potato. Once poked full of holes, dip the potato into the brine and mix it around to get it coated. Hopefully by this point your oven has finished preheating, so we can take a sheet, cover it in tin foil for easy cleanup, put your potatoes onto that sheet and stick it into the oven on the middle layer. That'll take anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, so now we can begin with the roasted veggies. Here I got some carrots that I'm removing the heads off of and then slicing into halves or thirds, and then cutting again if needed to make sure all the pieces are of a rough, even thickness. Next up, I got some sprouts that have been washed and cleaned. Just gonna cut the tails off of those guys because they won't cook up that nicely. Then slice the sprouts in half lengthwise. Gather those sliced veggies into a bowl and drizzle it with some oil. Here I'm using a basic canola oil. Afterwards, we season with salt and whatever spices, sauces, marinades you want. I'm using the leftover cumin and black pepper from before. Now we want to give it a good mix to make sure everything's evenly distributed. You can do this with a fork, spoon, spatula, whatever, or get fancy and toss it around. Spread everything onto a sheet covered in parchment paper or foil, again for easier cleanup, and make sure the sheet is big enough to hold everything. Once onto the sheet, turn all of the cut sides down. This is to ensure we get good browning and color onto the veggie. Also, try and get the thicker vegetables on the edges and the thinner, smaller stuff towards the center because the outside of the pan gets hotter than the inside. Finally, we pop that into the oven on the bottommost rack, and this should cook anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. Last up for prep, we got our cabbage. So I use half a cabbage, and I like to cut the tail off, and then cut the whole thing in half lengthwise to make slicing it into shreds much easier. Once you've cut it in half, give it a quarter turn and just start slicing perpendicular to the table. The cabbage should fall apart into shreds on its own. As you make your way towards the base, you can take the cabbage, hold it at an angle, and remove the core by slicing straight down. Afterwards, continue slicing as you were before, but be careful because the cabbage is far less stable, so you might need to go a bit slower. And now we make the deglazing sauce, which can be whatever you want. In this example, I'm using simply soy sauce and rice wine vinegar. So let's begin cooking. Get a pan, heat it on medium-high heat, and let it sit there for a bit. Afterwards, drizzle a little bit of oil and spread it around. Once the oil starts smoking, we're good to go. This is to develop a non-stick coating. Put a little bit more oil in the pan, and then take all of your pork chops and put them into the pan with that fat side facing down first. This is to develop a nice crispy texture and render the fat on the pork. So we hold this here for about 1 minute. Then we lay our pork chops flat into the pan and let them sit there, not touching them, not moving them, for anywhere from 2.5 to 3 minutes. If you develop a lot of smoke during this time, feel free to cover the pan with a lid. Next, we flip each pork chop over and let them sit there, again, not touching it, for another 2.5 to 3 minutes. If not all of your pork chops fit in the pan, feel free to do this in batches. I am lazy and stubborn and try to do it all in one go. While the pork is cooking on that side, the potatoes should be in the oven for around 40 minutes at this point, so let's take them out and cover them with some oil. You can use your hands and burn yourself, or be smart and use a spoon. Pop those potatoes back into the oven and let's check back in on our pork. They should be medium rare at this point, so you can take them out, but I like mine a little bit more well cooked, so I like to flip them over for another 60 seconds. Afterwards, you can take them out of the pan and let them rest for 10 minutes. The important thing is that you've built up a good layer of gunk on the bottom of your pan, also known as fond. Normally this would be a pain in the butt to clean, but because we're going to braise cabbage in this pan, we're going to deglaze it, making it much easier to clean. This fond also gives a great flavor to whatever is being cooked in it. So to start, dump that sauce into the pan and give it a good scrape, getting all them nummy bits off the bottom of the pan. Then we add the sliced cabbage and cover. Occasionally give the cabbage a stir, so that way we coat it in that fond sauce we made earlier. By now, those roasted veggies should have been in the oven anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes, so let's pop those out and take a look at them. Take a look at the undersides to see how much browning we got, and if you want some more, put it back in the oven, but I'm pretty happy with this, so I'm going to take these guys out. Back to the cabbage, giving it that occasional stir, again, to coat everything in the sauce. Total cook time for the cabbage should be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Once it's tender to our liking, we can take it out of the pan. And look at that. Look at how much cleaner that pan is and how much easier it's going to be to wash dishes later. All that gunk is delicious and it got absorbed by the cabbage. And with that, we are done. Your pork chops have been rested, your potatoes have been baked, your veggies have been roasted, and your cabbage has been braised. A full meat in 3 dinner.